I've been the invisible hand of this company for 17 years, and let me tell you, the invisible hand is usually the one flipping you the bird. People think payroll is just hitting a button and watching numbers fly through the ether like magic corporate fairy dust. It's not. It's plumbing. It's sewage. It's routing 1 million gallons of financial sludge through pipes that were built when dial-up was considered cutting-edge technology, making sure nobody's mortgage check bounces, because a sales rep in Omaha decided to input his commission as a negative integer. I'm Colleen. I'm 48. I drive a Honda that smells like vanilla and resignation. And up until last week, I was the only reason 10,000 employees could afford to buy groceries. Listen, before I get into how I basically performed a digital lobotomy on a Fortune 500 company, do me a favor and hit subscribe. Maybe smash the like. It fuels my caffeine addiction and tells the algorithm that you enjoy watching corporate empires burn. So, here's the landscape. I'm the payroll systems administrator. It's a fancy title for the janitor of money. I sit in a cubicle that gets zero natural light, tucked behind the server room that hums loud enough to rattle your teeth. I like the hum. It drowns out the sound of the marketing team upstairs congratulating themselves for breathing. For nearly 2 decades, I built a delicate ecosystem of scripts, patches, and backdoors that held our ancient payroll software together. The vendor stopped supporting our version back when Obama was in his first term, but management, in their infinite, penny-pinching wisdom, refused to upgrade. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, they said. It was broke. It was shattered. It was a digital crime scene. The only reason it worked was because I wrote 3 specific automation scripts that ran every other Tuesday at 2:00 a.m. I called them the Holy Trinity. Script 1, the scrubber. It went in and cleaned up the inevitable data formatting vomit that HR spewed into the SQL database. Script 2, the handshake, forced the bank's modern API to talk to our dinosaur COBOL backend by essentially tricking the bank into thinking we were a secure connection. Script 3, the silencer. This was my favorite. It suppressed about 4,000 error messages that would otherwise flood the IT help desk tickets and crash the server, auto-resolving them based on a logic tree I spent 4 Christmases perfecting. Nobody knew about the Trinity. Not really. To the executives, it was just Colleen from downstairs, the woman with the sensible cardigans who nodded in meetings and made sure the direct deposits hit by Friday morning. They looked at me and saw furniture. A fixture. You don't thank a lamp for giving light, and you don't thank Colleen for making sure the IRS doesn't raid the building. I was fine with that. I liked the silence. I liked the predictability. I had my routine, black coffee, noise-canceling headphones playing rain sounds, the soothing flow of data streams. Then came Ryder. Ryder was the new CFO. He was 32, had a jawline that looked like it was carved out of arrogance, and an MBA from somewhere that charges you 6 figures to learn how to use the word synergy unironically. He didn't walk, he strutted. He wore suits that cost more than my first car and smelled like sandalwood and aggressive ambition. He was brought in to trim the fat and modernize operations. It's corporate code for fire the people who actually know how things work and replace them with shiny dashboards that don't mean anything. The first time I met Ryder, he didn't look me in the eye. He looked at my monitor setup. 2 screens, he asked, wrinkling his nose like he'd smelled a wet dog. Efficient people only need one. It's about focus, Colleen. I monitor live transaction, flows on the left and audit logs on the right, I said, my voice flat. If I miss a flow error, the warehouse in Jersey doesn't get overtime pay. If the warehouse doesn't get overtime, they strike. If they strike, you don't ship product, he chuckled, actually chuckled. A condescending, dry sound. We have software for that, don't we? Automation is the future. We need to move away from tribal knowledge. That was the first red flag. It's the buzzword executives use when they're angry that you're smarter than them. He walked away, tapping something into his iPhone, probably texting his bros about how quaint the legacy staff was. I watched him go, and I felt that old familiar twist in my gut. It wasn't fear. It was the sensation of a barometer dropping before a tornado touches down. Over the next month, Ryder went on a rampage. He fired the head of IT security because he pushed back too much on accessibility, replaced the breakroom coffee with a cheaper brand that tasted like battery acid and despair. And he started holding innovation summits, mandatory meetings where we had to sit in a circle and throw a foam ball around while brainstorming ways to disrupt ourselves. I sat there, holding the foam ball, looking at this guy who had never processed a single W-2 in his life, and I knew. I knew he was looking at my salary, which, admittedly, grown decent over 17 years, and doing the math. He saw a cost center. He saw a middle-aged woman in a cardigan who didn't use Slack emojis and didn't hang out at the Thursday happy hours. He saw fat to be trimmed. He didn't see the grenade pin I was holding. He didn't see that the Trinity scripts were running locally on my admin profile, triggered by my specific user permissions. Didn't know that the system he thought was so stable was actually a Rube Goldberg machine held together by my sheer will and a few thousand lines of custom Python code. I could have told him. I could have scheduled a meeting and walked him through the architecture. I could have explained that if you remove the cornerstone, the cathedral falls down. But you can't teach physics to a man who thinks gravity is just a suggestion. The tension in the office was thick enough to chew on. My coworkers, the few who were left from the old guard, walked around with that hunted look in their eyes. We were like gazelles waiting for the lion to decide who looked the slowest. But I wasn't slow. I was just still, waiting. 2 days before the end of the fiscal quarter, I saw a calendar invite pop up in my inbox. Transition Sync. Hosted by Ryder and the HR director, a woman named Tiffany who smiled so much I was convinced she was actually a robot programmed by a sociopath. Transition Sync. I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold. I looked at my screens, the beautiful, cascading waterfalls of green text on black backgrounds, the heartbeat of the company. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a thumb drive. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't run to the bathroom to hyperventilate. I just quietly, methodically, started backing up my personal files. Not the work files, those belong to them. I mean my personal cheat sheets, my logic maps, the documentation I had written for myself because the official manuals were garbage. I looked at the clock. The meeting was in 10 minutes. I knew exactly what was about to happen. Ryder was going to cut the fat. He was going to save the company $85K a year plus benefits. He was going to get a bonus for streamlining the department. I stood up, smoothed out my skirt, and walked toward the conference room. I felt like a demolition expert walking away from a building rigged to blow, knowing the new owner was about to walk in and start playing with matches. The conference room smelled like dry erase markers and cheap cologne. It was the fishbowl, glass walls on 3 sides. Everyone in the open plan office could see exactly who was getting executed. Ryder was sitting at the head of the table, leaning back in a Herman Miller Aeron chair, like he was posing for the cover of Douchebag Monthly. Tiffany from HR sat next to him, clutching a manila folder like it was a holy scripture. She gave me a sympathetic grimace, that specific expression HR people learn in a lab that says, "I'm sorry I have to ruin your life, but it's policy." "Lean, have a seat," Ryder said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. He didn't stand up to shake my hand. Power move or just bad manners? Probably both. I sat. I folded my hands on the table. I didn't bring a notebook. I didn't bring a pen. I just brought my gaze, which I fixed right on the bridge of Ryder's nose. So, Ryder started, clapping his hands together once. "We've been doing a deep dive into the department's structural integrity, looking for redundancies, bottlenecks, anchors. Anchors," I repeated. My voice was steady, monotone. "Exactly," he nodded, oblivious to the fact that anchors are the only thing keeping the ship from drifting into the rocks. "We're moving to a cloud-native, SaaS-based payroll interface next quarter. It's going to be intuitive, drag and drop, very sleek. We won't need manual intervention anymore." "Manual intervention," I said again. I was enjoying this. I was describing a Ferrari to a mechanic who knew he was buying a chassis with no engine. "Ryder, the current system processes complex commissions for the sales team that vary by state tax law. The SaaS-based interface you're looking at, is it the one from Payflow Pro?" He blinked, surprised I knew the vendor. "Yes, it's top of the line. It doesn't handle multi-state retroactive overtime adjustments," I said simply. "I wrote a patch for that in 2018. If you switch without porting that logic, you'll be violating labor laws in California, New York, and Illinois within the first pay period." Ryder waved his hand dismissively like he was swatting a fly. "The consultants assured us it's plug and play. Colleen, look, you've been a steady hand here. We appreciate that. But you represent a legacy mindset. We need agility. We need people who are digital natives." "I see," I said. "I'm too old." That's what you're saying. Oh, no, no. Tiffany chimed in, her voice going up an octave. It's not about age, Colleen. It's about skill alignment. It's a restructuring of resources. Ryder leaned forward, elbows on the table, giving me his best serious leader face. We're eliminating the position of systems administrator. It's redundant. The new software manages itself. So today is your last day. There it was. The shotgun blast. But instead of buckshot, it was a severance package and an NDA. Prepared a generous transition package, Tiffany said, sliding the folder across the table. 2 weeks' pay for every year of service. But it's contingent on a smooth handover of all credentials and immediate departure. Immediate? I raised an eyebrow. Security protocol, Ryder said, checking his watch. We need your badge and your laptop. IT has already disabled your network access. As of 10 minutes ago. I felt a cold smile spreading inside my chest. Wasn't visible on my face. My face was a mask of polite indifference. But inside, I was grinning like a Cheshire cat in a butcher shop. They had disabled my network access. But they hadn't wiped the local scheduled tasks on the server itself because they didn't know where to look. And by locking me out 10 minutes ago, they had prevented me from turning off the autopilot. You're firing the pilot mid-flight, I said softly. And you think the plane flies itself. The plane is being upgraded to a drone, Colleen, Ryder scoffed. We don't need a pilot, we need space. I stood up. I didn't argue, I didn't scream. I didn't throw the manila folder in his face, even though the urge was there, pulsing in my fingertips. I knew something he didn't. I knew that efficiency without understanding is just suicide with better marketing. Okay, I said. Ryder looked disappointed. He wanted a fight, wanted me to be the hysterical older woman so he could validate his decision that I was emotional and unfit. He wanted a scene he could recount to his buddies over craft beers later. Yeah, she totally lost it, bro. Sad, really. I wasn't going to give him that. I was going to give him something much, much worse. I was going to give him exactly what he asked for. I'll pack my things, I said. Security will escort you, Ryder added, signaling to the glass door. 2 guards, guys I've said good morning to for 5 years, were waiting. They looked embarrassed. They wouldn't meet my eyes. That won't be necessary, I said, grabbing the folder. I know the way out. I walked back to my desk, the 2 guards trailing me like I was a convict. The office was silent. Heads were down. Nobody wanted to catch the contagion of unemployment. I reached my cubicle, my home for nearly 2 decades, and saw the black screen. Account disabled. Perfect. I picked up my framed photo of my cat, Barnaby. I picked up my favorite mug. It said I survived another meeting that should have been an email. I picked up my dead plant. You need to leave the laptop, one of the guards muttered. Sorry, Colleen. It's okay, Mike, I said. I don't need the laptop. I didn't, because the beautiful thing about the system I built, it was designed to run unless I told it to stop. But the fail-safes, the error catchers, scripts that scrubbed the data clean so the system didn't choke on its own vomit, those were linked to my active user profile. When they disabled my account, they didn't just lock me out. They killed the immune system of the company's payroll infrastructure. They just gave the company AIDS, and they were celebrating because they saved money on the doctor. I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. I stepped into the lobby, the guards flanking me. I handed over my bag, the plastic worn smooth from thousands of swipes. Good luck, Mike, I said. Take care, Colleen, he mumbled. The automatic doors slid open. The humid air hit me. I walked to my Honda, tossed my box of junk in the passenger seat, and sat there for a moment. I lit a metaphorical cigarette. I quit smoking 10 years ago, but in my soul I was lighting a Marlboro Red with a flamethrower. I turned the key. The engine started. You wanted streamlined. I whispered to the steering wheel. You got it, Ryder. The pay cycle ended in 6 days. The countdown had begun. The drive home was a blur of strip malls and rage. You know that feeling when you bite your tongue really hard, that sharp, metallic taste of blood? That's what my brain felt like. I had spent 17 years keeping that ship afloat. I had come in on weekends when the server room flooded, had manually entered data for 300 employees during the great crash of '09, just so people could buy Christmas presents. And for what? To be escorted out by a rent-a-cop like I was stealing staplers. I got home, walked into my kitchen, and put the box on the counter. My cat, Barnaby, looked at me with that judgmental squint. Yeah, I'm home early, I told him. Don't get used to it. I'm technically unemployed. I didn't cry. I made banana bread. That's what I do when I want to murder someone. I mash bananas. I beat the hell out of the batter. It's therapeutic. As the oven preheated, I sat at my kitchen table with my personal laptop, a beat-up Dell that ran Linux and logged into a secure shell. Now, before the legal eagles on this thread start hyperventilating, I didn't hack the company. I didn't touch their servers. I wouldn't give Ryder the satisfaction of a lawsuit. No, I was checking my external monitoring. See, years ago, I set up a simple ping script from my home network just to tell me if the company payroll server was online. It was a heartbeat monitor. Ping, 20 ms, ping, 21 ms. It was still beating. For now, let me explain exactly what Ryder had done by disabling me. My account, see admin01, wasn't just a user login. Over the years, because IT was lazy and I was competent, my account had become the de facto service account for the Trinity scripts. Script 1, the scrubber. Every pay period, the sales department uploads a CSV file with their commissions. Salespeople are creative. They put $signs where they shouldn't be. They use commas instead of periods. They add notes like urgent payment in the amount column. If you feed that raw garbage into the main payroll mainframe, the mainframe doesn't just reject the file. It locks the batch, freezes, it requires a hard reset. My scrubber script intercepted that file, rejected the hell out of it, stripped the nonsense, and formatted it perfectly for the mainframe. Status without me, dead. The next sales file would be a digital pipe bomb. Script 2, the handshake. Our bank changed their encryption protocol 5 years ago. They demanded TLS 1.2. Our ancient payroll system only spoke SSL 3.0. The company wouldn't pay for the upgrade, $200K. So I wrote a middleware script that acted as a translator. It took the old signal, wrapped it in a new coat, and handed it to the bank. It ran as a background service under, you guessed it, my user credentials. Status without me. When my account was disabled, the authentication token for that script died. The next time the system tried to talk to the bank was going to treat it like a stranger trying to break into the vault. Script 3, the silencer. This was the big one. Our database had a memory leak, a bad one. If it ran for more than 14 days without a specific cache clear command, it would consume 100% of the server's RAM and crash the OS. I had a scheduled task running every Sunday night to clear that cache. Status without me. The task was linked to my profile. No profile, no task execution. The server was now a ticking time bomb of memory consumption. I pulled the banana bread out of the oven. The smell filled the kitchen, sweet, warm, comforting. It smelled like victory. I checked my phone, 4:00 p.m. The transition sync email from Tiffany had included a generic exit interview link. I opened it. Reason for leaving, involuntary separation. Would you recommend this company to a friend? No. Additional comments. I stared at the text box. I typed, ensure the cron jobs on server PAY04 are migrated to a service account immediately. Then I deleted it. Why should I tell them? They fired the expert. They bought the SAW solution. Ryder said manual intervention wasn't needed. If I told them, I'd be intervening. I'd be holding their hand from beyond the grave, and Ryder wanted to be an adult. Adults clean up their own messes. I closed the laptop. 3 days passed. I spent them gardening. I reorganized my spice rack. I watched daytime TV, which is a terrifying glimpse into the decline of Western civilization. I drank wine at 2 p.m. It was glorious. On the 4th day, I got a text from Sarah, a junior payroll clerk who was still there. She was sweet, barely 24. Sarah, hey Colleen, things are weird here. The system is really slow. The sales file keeps throwing an error I've never seen. Error 909, format mismatch. Do you know what that is? I looked at the phone. I liked Sarah. She was innocent collateral damage. But if I helped her, I helped Ryder. Me, sorry Sarah, I don't work there anymore. I don't have access. You should ask Ryder. He has a plan. Sarah, he's in a meeting with the consultants. They're saying it's a network latency issue. I laughed out loud. Network latency. That's it, speak for we have no idea what the hell is happening, so we're blaming the invisible wires. Me, good luck, Sarah. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. The pay cycle was scheduled to run on Monday night. Today was Thursday. The memory leak on the server was probably at 80% capacity. The sales file was already rejected, meaning commissions wouldn't calculate. And the bank handshake. Oh, that was the finale. I poured myself another glass of Chardonnay. Wasn't Marlboro smoke, but it burned just right going down. The storm wasn't coming. I was the storm, and I had already left the building. Friday morning. The last business day before payroll needs to be finalized. In the world of payroll, Friday before pay week is D-Day. You verify the totals, you check the variance reports, and you stage the ACH file for transmission. It's a high-stress ballet. I was at Target buying decorative throw pillows. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. I checked the screen. It was an unknown number, but the area code was the office. I let it go to voicemail. I imagined the scene inside the office. It would be subtle at first. Just sluggishness. The screen's loading a fraction of a second slower. The cursor's lagging. That was the memory leak. The server was gasping for air, its RAM filling up with junk data that my script used to vacuum up. It was like a hoarder's house filling up with newspapers. Eventually, you can't walk to the door. I went to the checkout. "Did you find everything okay?" the cashier asked. "I found peace," I said. She looked at me like I was high. Maybe I was high on Schadenfreude. Later that afternoon, I checked LinkedIn. I couldn't help myself. It's a sickness. There was a post from Ryder. Of course there was. Picture of him standing in front of a whiteboard with a bunch of meaningless arrows drawn on it. Caption: "Disrupting the status quo. Rocket excited to lead the finance team into a new era of agility. Sometimes you have to break the old molds to build the new sculptures." #leadership #fintech #no looking back. I snorted so hard I nearly choked on my iced tea. Break the old molds. Buddy, you didn't break a mold. You broke the load-bearing wall. Saturday, the server should be critical by now. If anyone in IT was paying attention to the dashboard, they'd see the CPU usage spiking to 99%. But it was Saturday. The IT guys were home gaming or fishing. And since Ryder had fired the security lead who used to monitor weekend alerts, the red flashing light on the console was blinking in an empty room. Sunday night, the witching hour. This was when the ACH transmission happened. The handshake. System compiles the master file, millions of dollars in salaries, and knocks on the bank's digital door. Knock, knock. Bank, who is it? System, it's me, Legacy Payroll. Bank, show me your ID TLS 1.2 token. System, here is my ID Colleen's disabled user credential. Bank, access denied. I was sitting on my porch, listening to the crickets. It was 11 p.m. Somewhere in a server room 10 miles away, a process failed. Didn't explode. It didn't scream. It just stopped. The queue froze. The file didn't send. And because the silencer script wasn't running to suppress the error, the system did exactly what it was programmed to do in 1998 when a transmission failed. It retried. Immediately, and failed again, and retried, and failed. It entered an infinite loop, a retry storm. Within minutes, it would be generating thousands of error logs per second. Hard drive space reserved for logs would fill up. The CPU would melt down. The entire application would seize. I took a sip of wine. "Happy Monday, Ryder," I whispered. Monday morning, 8 a.m. I woke up to 14 missed calls. 3 from Sarah. 1 from Tiffany in HR. 4 from the IT help desk director, a guy named Dave who I actually tolerated. And 6 from a number I didn't recognize, but I assumed belonged to the man of the hour. I listened to Sarah's voicemail first. She sounded like she was crying. "Colleen, oh my God, Colleen, pick up. Nothing is working. The screens are all white. It just says fatal exception 0x004. People are calling asking about their pay stubs. The portal is down. Ryder is screaming at everyone. Please, if you know a password or something, call me." I deleted the message. I felt a twinge of guilt for Sarah. She was a good kid. She was collateral damage in Ryder's war on competence. I listened to Dave's message. "Colleen, it's Dave. Look, I know they screwed you, I know, but the server is bricked. Like hard bricked, we can't even remote in. The logs are full, did you change the root password before you left? Just tell me. I won't tell them. We're drowning here." "I didn't change the password, Dave. I just took the keys to the bathroom with me. I made coffee. I put on jazz. I decided today was a good day to go to the zoo." I turned my phone off. You see, in the corporate world, silence is the loudest weapon you have. If I answered, if I yelled, if I gloated, I was just a disgruntled ex-employee. But by vanishing, by letting the silence stretch out while their world caught fire, I was a myth. I was a ghost. And ghosts are terrifying. I spent the day at the zoo watching the gorillas have a very sensible social structure. If the leader acts like an idiot, the others throw poop at him until he stops. Corporate America could learn a lot from primates. When I turned my phone back on at 5 p.m., the notification light didn't just blink, it strobed. My inbox was a war zone. The text messages were evolving. They had gone from confusion to panic to bargaining. "Tiffany, HR, Colleen, can we jump on a quick call? Seems to be a glitch in the transition." Tiffany, HR 1 hour later. Colleen, it's urgent, please. Tiffany, HR 2 hours later. We are prepared to discuss a consulting fee. Ah, there it is, the magic words, consulting fee. But I wasn't ready yet. The pain hadn't set in deep enough. You don't put a cast on a broken leg until you've set the bone, and Ryder's ego was still far too intact. I drove home and logged into my news feed, internal company Slack channel. I couldn't post, obviously, since my account was disabled. But here's a fun fact. The general channel was public-facing if you knew the URL, intended for external partners to see company announcements. They never password-protected the read-only view. It was glorious. Employee A, is anyone else unable to see their pay stub for Friday? Employee B, mine just says error. Employee C, I called HR and nobody answered. The line just disconnected. Employee D, warehouse manager. My guys are asking if deposits are hitting at midnight. If they don't, nobody is loading the trucks tomorrow. Just a heads up. Then, a post from Ryder. Ryder CFO, team, we are experiencing a minor technical migration issue with the new payroll interface. Rest assured, our top engineers are on it. Expect a slight delay. Thank you for your agility. Agility was still using buzzwords while the ship was taking on water. Tuesday morning, payday -1. The deposits usually hit the bank pending status by now. They hadn't. The phone rang. It was the number I suspected was Ryder's private cell. I let it ring. It rang again immediately. I answered. Hello, I said, voice cheerful like I'd just woken up from a refreshing nap. Colleen, the voice was tight, strained. It was Ryder. He sounded like he had aged 10 years in 3 days. It's Ryder. Oh, hello, Ryder. To what do I owe the pleasure? I thought we had transitioned. Look, cut the crap, he snapped. Then he caught himself. He took a breath. I could hear the desperation rattling in his throat. We have a situation. The server is locked. IT can't get in. The logs are flooded with some error about a handshake failure. And the sales data is corrupted. It sounds like a problem for your new SAW-S interface, I said. Is the drag and drop not working? The SAW-S integration isn't live yet. He shouted, then lowered his voice to a hiss. We were running the old system one last time, but it's broken. It wasn't broken when I left Ryder. It was purring. Well, it's broken now. Dave says there were scripts running under your user profile. See admin01. He says when we killed your ID, the scripts stopped. Oh, I said, feigning surprise. You mean the automation protocols? The ones I built to patch the holes in the software the company refused to upgrade? Yes, those. We need the passwords to restart them. There are no passwords, Ryder. They run on my user token, which you deleted. To restart them, you'd need to rebuild the logic from scratch, or reinstate my user ID. But, oh, wait. Security protocol, right? Immediate departure. I can reactivate your ID. Said quickly, I'm doing it right now. Just tell us how to trigger the batch. I can't do that, Ryder. Why not? Because I'm not an employee. Accessing your network would be a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I signed an NDA, remember? I have to respect the security boundaries you set. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Name your price, he said. I don't have a price, Ryder. I have a life. And right now, I'm making a pot roast. Luck with the agility. I hung up. I blocked his number. I stared at the phone. My heart was hammering, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I had just hung up on the CFO of a $500 million company while he was begging. But the real twist wasn't the money. It was what was happening in the background. See, when a public company misses payroll, it triggers things. Automatic things. The Department of Labor gets a flag. The bank gets suspicious. And most importantly, board of directors starts getting emails from angry investors who check Glassdoor and see employees screaming about wage theft. Ryder wasn't just fighting a computer error. He was fighting a gravitational collapse. Wednesday, payday. The deposits didn't hit. 0. The silence broke. The news picked it up. A local business blog ran a headline, Payroll Glitch or Cash Crisis. Local tech giant misses payday for 10,000 employees. My LinkedIn inbox pinged. Wasn't Ryder. It was the chairman of the board, a man named Mr. Henderson. I had met him once at a Christmas party 10 years ago. He was old money, serious money. Message, Colleen. This is Charles Henderson. We need to talk, not about a job, about fixing a disaster. Please call my office. I smiled. The pot roast was excellent, by the way. I let Mr. Henderson wait for an hour. You don't pick up on the first ring for the chairman of the board. It looks desperate. I cleaned my gutters. I watered my hydrangeas. Then I made a cup of tea, sat in my favorite armchair, and dialed the number. This is Colleen, I said. Colleen, Henderson's voice was like gravel wrapped in velvet. He didn't sound panicked like Ryder. He sounded tired. He sounded like a man who was looking at a balance sheet bleeding red ink. Thank you for returning my call. I have a lot of free time these days, Mr. Henderson, since I was transitioned. Yes, I've heard about the transition, he paused. Ryder tells me you're holding the system hostage. I laughed, a genuine, sharp laugh. Hostage? Mr. Henderson, Ryder fired the pilot, threw the parachute out the window, and is now blaming gravity for the crash. I didn't touch the system. I left. The system broke because it was designed to need a skilled operator, and Ryder replaced the operator with a manifesto about synergy. Says you refuse to help IT unlock the scripts. I refuse to commit a felony by accessing a network I'm unauthorized to use. I'm a civilian, sir. If I log in, I'm a hacker. Unless I am formally contracted with full indemnification and administrative clearance. Done, Henderson said. We'll send over a contract. Triple your previous hourly rate. Just get the money to the people, Colleen. The unions are threatening a walkout by noon tomorrow. No, I said. Silence again. Excuse me? I don't want an hourly rate, and I don't want a contract that Ryder signs. If I come back, it's not to patch a leak so Ryder can fire me again next month when the SAW interface finally loads. I come back to restore order. What are your terms? 1. Ryder is terminated, effective immediately. For cause. Incompetence will do. Colleen, he's the CFO. I can't just cost you $10 million in productivity in 3 days, Mr. Henderson. He risked a Department of Labor audit. He alienated your entire workforce. If he stays, I stay home. And you can explain to the shareholders why the stock dropped 15% because you wanted to save face for a guy who thinks Python is just a snake. Henderson sighed. A long, deep exhalation. He knew I was right. That's the thing about old money. They care about the bottom line more than they care about ego. 2, I continued. I report directly to the board until a competent CFO is hired. No interim nonsense. And 3, I want a formal apology. Written, from Ryder. Sent to the entire company. Admitting that the delay was due to management error regarding personnel decisions. That's humiliating, Henderson said. Was being escorted out by security like a criminal after 17 years of perfect service, I replied. Humility builds character. Ryder could use some. I need an hour, Henderson said. Take 2, I said. I'm going to watch Judge Judy. I hung up. My hands were shaking a little now. I had just demanded the head of a C-suite executive on a platter. It was insane. It was suicide. Or it was the only move I had. 30 minutes later, my phone pinged. News alert. Breaking. CFO of company name steps down amid operational restructuring. Steps down. Cute. They let him resign. But he was gone. Then an email hit my personal inbox. Subject, consulting agreement urgent. Attached was a contract. The rate wasn't triple, it was quadruple. And there was a clause, full autonomy over payroll systems architecture. And then a second email. From Ryder's corporate account, but clearly written by legal. All staff subject. Regarding payroll delay team, please accept my apologies for the disruption in pay. This was due to an oversight in transition planning regarding key technical personnel. We are working to rectify it immediately. It wasn't quite the abject groveling I wanted, but it was close enough. It was an admission that he broke it. I signed the contract on my phone. I replied to Henderson. I'm on my way. I didn't put on a suit. Put on jeans and a hoodie. I grabbed my keys. I drove back to the office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the glass building. It looked like a tomb. I parked in the visitor spot. I walked to the front doors. The same guard, Mike, was there. He saw me coming. He practically leaped over the desk to open the door. Colleen, thank God, he said. My wife is killing me about the mortgage. Don't worry, Mike, I said, walking past him. Mama's home. The office felt like a bunker during an air raid. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, the air stale. People were huddled in clusters, whispering. When they saw me, the whispering stopped. It was like Moses parting the Red Sea, if Moses was a middle-aged woman in a hoodie carrying a reusable water bottle. I walked straight to the server room. I didn't stop at HR. I didn't stop at my old desk. I went to the heart of the beast. Door to the server room was propped open with a chair. Inside, Dave, the IT director, and 3 of his sysadmins were sweating through their shirts. The room was hot. The AC was struggling to keep up with the heat coming off the racks. Dave looked up. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red, his hair a mess. Colleen, he breathed. Jesus, is it true? Is Ryder gone? He's pursuing other opportunities, I said dryly. Move. Eve scrambled out of the chair in front of the main console. I sat down. The chair was still warm. The screen was a wall of red text. Fatal error, log overflow, memory exception, process deadlock. It was worse than I thought. The retry storm had essentially DDoSed our own internal network. The database was corrupted because it had crashed mid-write. Okay, I said, cracking my knuckles. Dave, get me a coffee. Black. The rest of you, get out. Don't need you breathing down my neck. But, do you need the admin password? We reset everything, one of the junior guys squeaked. I don't need your passwords, I said, pulling my laptop out of my bag. I built the backdoor, they left. I was alone with the hum. I plugged into the console. I opened my terminal. First things first, stop the bleeding. I typed in the kill command for the retry loop. Sudo kill -9 process ID. The scrolling red text stopped. Room instantly felt quieter. The fans on the server slowed down from jet engine to hair dryer. Step 2, the scrubber. I had to manually clear the log files. I typed the command. A progress bar appeared, deleting 45 GB of error logs. While that ran, Tiffany from HR appeared in the doorway. She looked terrified. Colleen, can I get you anything? I swiveled around. You can get me the file from sales. The raw CSV. Tell them if they ever use a $sign in a numeric field again, I will personally garnish their commissions. Right away, she ran, actually ran. The logs cleared. Space freed up. The server breathed. Now the hard part, the corrupted database. I had to restore from the backup, but the backup was from Friday. If I restored, we'd lose 3 days of transactional data. I hesitated. Then I remembered script 3, the silencer. It didn't just suppress errors, it cached them. If my hunch was right, the data wasn't lost. It was just stuck in the throat of the system, waiting to be swallowed. I navigated to the hidden temp directory I had created years ago. cd/usr/local/colleen/temp ls. There it was. Cache dump Monday dat. The data was safe. It was sitting there, protected by my code, waiting for me to come back. I almost cried. It was like finding a survivor in the rubble. You beautiful bastard, I whispered to the screen. I initiated the restore script. Parsing data, rebuilding index, success. The database turned green. The system ready prompt blinked. Tiffany ran back in with a USB drive. The sales file, I took it. I didn't even check it. I ran it through my scrubber script. Processing, errors found 412. Errors fixed 412. File ready for import. I looked at the clock. 8:15 p.m. ACH window for next day deposit closed at 9 o'clock p.m. If I transmitted now, people would get paid by tomorrow morning. I queued the file. I initiated the handshake. The system reached out to the bank. Connecting, handshake verified, transmitting batch. I watched the progress bar, 10%, 40%, 80%. Dave and the IT guys were huddled in the doorway again, watching silently. It was like watching a bomb defusal. Transmission complete. Bank confirmation received. I sat back. I exhaled a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Friday. Done, I said. People get paid tomorrow. Dave let out a cheer. The junior guys high-fived. Tiffany looked like she was going to faint from relief. I stood up. My back popped. Dave, I said, don't touch anything. The memory leak is still there. I'll patch it permanently tomorrow. But for tonight, the system is stable. You're coming back tomorrow. You've asked? I'm a consultant, Dave, I said, grabbing my bag. I bill by the hour, and I have a lot of cleaning up to do. I walked out of the server room. The office was still tense, but the panic was gone. The rumor had already spread. Colleen fixed it. I walked to the elevator. The doors opened. And there, standing in the lobby with a box of personal belongings, was Ryder. He was waiting for his Uber. He looked at me. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. The arrogance was gone. Looked like a kid who had crashed his dad's car. I stopped. He looked down at his shoes. You got it working? He mumbled. Yes, I said. I tried to modernize it, he said, almost to himself. I just wanted to make it better. You didn't want to make it better, Ryder, I said, stepping into the elevator. You wanted to make it yours. There's a difference. The doors closed. I watched his face disappear. I went down to the parking lot. I got in my Honda. I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there, listening to the engine hum. I checked my bank account on my phone. The consulting retainer had already hit. It was a very, very large number. I put the car in gear. I was going to buy a new car, maybe a Lexus. And I was going to buy really expensive vanilla extract for my next batch of banana bread. The next few weeks were a blur of vindication. Ryder's office was turned into a collaborative wellness space. Ironic. But really, it was just an empty room where I sometimes went to eat my lunch and stare at the view he used to think he owned. My new contract was a thing of beauty. I wasn't an employee. I was an external systems architect. That meant I didn't have to go to HR trainings. I didn't have to do performance reviews, and I definitely didn't have to attend innovation summits. I came in at 10 a.m. I left at 4 p.m., and nobody said a damn word. The board appointed a new interim CFO, a woman named Barbara who was 60, wore orthopedic shoes, and knew COBOL. We got along famously. Her first act was to approve the budget for the system upgrade I had been asking for since 2015. "Do it right, Colleen," she said, "and burn that SAW-S contract Ryder signed." I burned it with pleasure. But the best part wasn't the money or the hours. Fear. When I walked down the hall, managers would stop talking. They knew. They knew I was the one who could turn off the lights. They knew that the efficiency they worshipped was a fragile illusion held together by my code. I wasn't the janitor anymore. I was the landlord. One afternoon, Tiffany from HR stopped by my desk. She was trying to be friendly, trying to bridge the gap. "So, Colleen," she chirped, "now that things are settled, we're having a team happy hour on Friday. Do you like to come?" I looked at her. I looked at my screens, the green waterfalls of data, flowing smoothly, error-free. "Tiffany," I said, "I charge $250 an hour. Do you want to pay me $500 to drink cheap margaritas and listen to you talk about your Peloton?" She blinked. "Oh, I guess not. Good choice," I said. "I'll be home with my cat." I wasn't nice Colleen anymore. Nice Colleen got fired. Consultant Colleen was efficient. Consultant Colleen was expensive. Consultant Colleen didn't give a shit about being liked. She cared about being necessary. And Ryder, I heard through the grapevine Sarah, who was now my well-paid apprentice, that he had trouble finding a new gig. Apparently, tanking a Fortune 500 payroll system in 72 hours is a stain on the resume that even a Harvard MBA can't wash out. Last I heard, was doing consulting for a crypto startup that went bust 3 months later. Poetic justice is the sweetest kind, but there was one loose end. The system. I realized that by coming back, I had just reattached the shackles. I was essential again. If I left, they would crash again. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be trapped here until I died. So I started building something new. Not a patch, not a script, a manual. A real, comprehensive, idiot-proof manual. I spent my days documenting every line of code, every logic tree, every backdoor. I taught Sarah everything. I showed her the scrubber. I showed her the handshake. I showed her how to listen to the server hum. "Why are you teaching me this?" she asked one day. "Aren't you afraid I'll replace you?" "Sarah," I said, lighting a metaphorical cigarette, "I want you to replace me. Because the only thing better than being the person who keeps the lights on, being the person who can finally walk out the door and leave the switch in someone else's hand." 6 months later, the new system was live, the real new system, the one I designed, built, and tested. It worked. It was sleek, it was robust, and it didn't need the Trinity scripts anymore. The memory leak was plugged. The bank API was native. It was finished. I sat in my cubicle, well, my office now, and looked at the process complete notification. I looked at Sarah. She was sitting at her own desk, monitoring the flow. She looked confident. She wasn't asking questions anymore. She was answering them. "It's stable," Sarah said. "It is," I agreed. I opened my drawer. I took out my mug. I took out my framed photo of Barnaby. I opened my laptop. I drafted an email to Barbara and Mr. Henderson. Subject, contract conclusion. The migration is complete. Documentation is filed. Sarah's last name is fully trained and designated as lead systems administrator. My work here is done. Effective immediately, I hit send. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked over to Sarah. I handed her a thumb drive. "What's this?" she asked. "That," I said, "is the oh shit drive. It has the source code for a few utilities, just in case the new system isn't as perfect as the vendor says. Use it wisely, and never tell HR it exists." She smiled. A conspiratorial, pretty smile. She was learning. "Thanks, Colleen. Don't thank me," I said. "Just make sure they pay you what you're worth, and if they hire another rider, you call me. I will." I walked out of the building. It was a Tuesday, 2:00 p.m. The sun was shining. I walked to my new car, a Lexus, fully paid for with Ryder's severance money and Henderson's panic money. I got in. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. I had proven my point. I had burned the village to save it, and then I rebuilt the village better than it was before. But I wasn't going to live in the village. I was going to the beach. I started the car. I put on some Fleetwood Mac. I drove out of the parking lot past the security booth. Mike waved. I waved back. You know, people say everyone is replaceable, and they're right. Everyone is replaceable. But the cost of replacement, that's the variable they always forget. It wasn't just a payroll admin. I was the friction that kept the machine from spinning out of control. Now, I was just Colleen, and for the first time in 17 years, that was enough. I merged onto the highway, the city shrinking in my rearview mirror. My phone buzzed. Probably Barbara asking me to reconsider. Probably a recruiter. Probably the world trying to pull me back in. I rolled down the window. The wind was loud. I didn't check the phone. I just drove.